my name is Professor Rad, and today we're going to continue visualizing addition and see if we can come up with a sort of process to help us out. So I still have on the board the things that we had from the last video. So in the last video, we defined what addition meant, and then we demonstrated it using some dots when we had 2 plus 5. And then these were representing dimes. They were 10 cents each, so that we could add 60 plus 30. So like 60 cents plus 30 cents is 90 cents. So now we're going to do a couple more examples to see if we can combine these ideas in a way that will help us out. So here for part C, I have 62 plus 35. So one way that I could think of this is for the digit that's in the tens place, right? I could think of, like, if I have 62 cents, I could think of that as having 6 dimes for the 60 and then 2 pennies. So in other words, I have 6 circles to represent the 6, and then the 2, I have 2 dots. I can do the same thing for the 35. So for 30, we're going to have 3 circles, and then for the 5, we'll have 5 dots. So to get my answer, I can count up how many circles there were total, and that'll tell me the answer in the tens place. And then I can count up the dots total, and that'll tell me the answer in the ones place. So let's see what we get. We would get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 circles. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dots. So we would end up with 97. So this is one way that you can visualize addition of larger numbers. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to break down what this looks like mathematically. So how might we write this out with numbers? So what we're doing when we write out the 6 dimes and the 2 dots, we're really separating out 62 into 60 and 2, right? So we have 6 tens and 2 ones. Then when we're splitting up 35, we're thinking of that as 30 plus 5. So we have 3 tens and 5 ones. And our goal is to add these things together. So that's what we're first doing when we're drawing this picture. When I drew 62 in this manner, I split it up into 60 plus 2. And when I did 35, I split it up into 30 plus 5. Then when I added these circles together, I did the same thing as basically 60 plus 30. So I'm adding the t's together, the tens. And then when I added the dots, I did the 2 and the 5. So that ultimately we end up with, this would give us 90. And this would give us 7. That's what we had before. And that will ultimately give us 97. So let's go ahead and do an example where we walk through it this way. And we'll see if that is a way that makes sense for addition for you. So if these pictures make sense for you, if these circles and dots, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Great, you can continue to use them. If you're like, circles and dots, Professor Ed, what the heck are you talking about? Then let's just try working through it with numbers first, and then we'll relate it to the circles and dots. And if still you're like, no, then we'll try another technique in another video. But let's see if, let's work through another example and see if it makes sense. Okay, so for this next example, we have 24 plus 51. So I'm going to think of 24 as the same as 24. So 24 is the same as 20 and 4. 51 is the same as 50 and 1. So if I'm adding these two things together, I can split up each number in this way. Then I can go ahead and add the tens together. So 20 plus 50. So I'm going to do 20, 30, 40, 50, or I would do 2, 3, 4. Oh, sorry, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, or 2 plus 5. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I'm going to get a 70. And then 4 plus 1 is going to give me 5. So in the end, we end up with 75. So let's see what this would look like if we were to visualize it. So if I have 24, my 2 circles for 20, my 4 dots for 4. For 51, I'm going to have 5 circles for 50, and then 1 dot for the 1. And then when I add them up, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 circles. And then when I count up the dots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 75. So either of these methods can be used when you are adding numbers. Now we're going to take this process and do what's called generalize it. So when you generalize a process in math, it means we took some sort of pattern or technique that we tried in a few examples, and we see if it applies anytime. So we're going to work through, I have 3 more examples with some bigger numbers to see if this process makes sense for them. So let's go ahead. Okay, so for this example, we have 3 problems we need to solve. We have to find each sum. So we have 235 plus 104, 8,121 plus 243 plus 1,034. Yeah. Oh, now we have decimals, 16.3, 2.58, and 70.11. All right, so let's start out with that first one, right? So as we begin with part A here, I'm going to rewrite the problem, 235 plus 104. So when I split this up, this time we have 3 digits in each number. So I'm going to split it up based off of those 3 digits. So instead of just tens and ones, now I'm going to have hundreds, tens, and ones. So 235, we have 200, 30, and 5. For 104, we have 100, 4. And these are the things we want to add together. So I have my 200 plus 100, because these are both the hundreds. So 2 plus 1 is going to give me 3. So 200 plus 300 will give me, or 200 plus 100 will give me 300. Then I have 30. And notice that with 104, 100 plus 4, there was nothing in the tens place. So there was no tens here. So there's nothing else to add to the 30. We just get 30. And now we have 5 and 4. Those are the ones that were in the ones. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So in the end, we end up with 300 plus 30 plus 9, which is 339. Ta-da! Now, remember, I also said you could carry on, you could generalize the idea of using a picture. So before we used the dots for the ones place, and we were using circles for the tens place. So go ahead and make up a new shape for the hundreds, just like we made a new place value for the hundreds. So for example, maybe I want my hundreds to be squares. So I could think of 235. For the 200, I would have 2 squares. For 30, I have 1, 2, 3 circles. And then for the 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots. For 104, I have just 1 square. I don't have any circles because I don't have any in the tens place. And then I have 4 dots. All right, and then we go to combine them. I have 1, 2, 3 squares. I have 1, 2, 3 circles. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 dots. So we end up with the same answer, 339, either way. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to pause the video and play around with B and C. So see if you like working with the numbers, go ahead and split them up using the numbers. If you like using different shapes, come up with a different shape for each place value. So I'm going to ask you to work through B and C. Pause the video, work through them, and then when you unpause, I'm going to have my answers on the board and we'll talk about how I went through them and compare them to your process. So pause and I will see you soon. Okay, so let's see how you did. Now, if you got stuck or if you got frustrated, that's okay. That's part of playing, right? That's part of playing a video game is you play and sometimes you get stuck and you just have to walk away from the level, right? So I'm going to go through my process using both numbers and then the pictures. So I'm going to talk about the numbers solutions first, and then I'll go ahead and talk about the pictures. So when I worked on part B, I had 8,121, and I wrote that out in green. So I have 8,121. Then 243, I wrote out in red. So I had 243. And then I had 1,034. So I wrote out 1,034. Now, when I did this, I was like, this is kind of confusing. It's hard for me to see what's the same. So then I went through and I basically kind of organized my pieces, found similar like Legos I could put together or blocks that fit nicely and put them close to each other. So first I went with any of these numbers that had thousands. So for example, I had 8,000 and 1,000. I put those close together. Then I went through and I did any of the hundreds. So there was a 100, a 200, and that was it. So I put the 100 and the 200 close together. Then I did the T's, right? So I have 20, 40, and 30. So here's my 20, my 40, my 30. And then I did the singletons. So I had 1, 3, and 4. So I had 1, 3, and 4. So with all of that written out, it made it a little bit easier for me to see what numbers belong together. So then I could do 8,000 plus 1,000 to get 9,000. 100 plus 200 to get 300s. 20, 40, and 30 added together gave me 90. So let's see, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. So that's how I got 90. And then 1 and 3 makes 4, plus 4 makes 8. And then I added these all up. So I had 9,398. So that was how I worked through part B using numbers. And then I tried to take a lesson from that. So I noticed when I wrote this all out, then I had to do this extra step of organizing things. So I tried something new when I did part C, which may or may not, be to your liking. We'll find out. But what I did is I lined up my numbers. Instead of just kind of writing them all out, I put the 16.3 I did on one line, and then the next number I did on the second line, and then the third number I did on the third line. And I tried to line up those like numbers. So for example, when I had 16.3, here's my 10 from the 16, my 6, and then the 0.3. Then when I wrote out the 2.58, here's the 2, here's the 0.5, and now that 8 was a little tricky. So notice that the 8, I'm going to write out as 0.08. The reason I'm putting an 8 there, or 0 there, is because I need a placeholder between the decimal point and the 8, so I know what place value it should be in. So since this is 800ths, I have to write it out as 800ths. And then for 70.11, I lined up the 70 with the 10 because these were both like tens numbers. I didn't have any ones here, so I didn't line up any ones. Then I had a 10th, 0.1. So I lined up the 10th with the other tenths. And then the hundredths I lined up as well. And then I combined them. So I said 10 plus 70. So 7 plus 1 is going to give me 8. So I get 80. 6, 7, 8. So there's my 8. Then I did 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's my 9. And then I have 8 and 1 makes 9. So in the end, we end up with 88.99. So here's our 88.99. Now, I'll admit this decimal one is a little bit difficult for me to grasp on when I'm first learning it because of having to push the numbers over. So for part C, I was like, maybe I'm going to want to draw pictures. So let's go through these two examples now using pictures instead of numbers. So if the pictures make more sense to you, here's how I worked through those. So because in part B, I had thousands place, I needed to come up with a new picture for thousands, of course. So I decided to use a star. So for 8,121, I drew out 8 stars to represent 8,000. 1 square to represent 100, 2 circles to represent 20, and 1 dot to represent the 1. So what's important is that I remember, okay, all the thousands are going to be stars, all the hundreds are squares, the tens are circles, and the ones get a dot. So I have to remember what place value is going to correspond to what picture that I draw. So that when I go to do 243, I'm not going to have any stars because I don't have any thousands. So I'm going to start out with square, circle, dot. So I have 2 squares for 200, 4 circles for 40, and then 3 dots for 3. And then with 1,034, I have 1,000. Thousands were stars, so I have 1 star. I don't have any squares because I don't have any tens. I have 1, 2, 3 circles, and then my 4 dots. And then to finish this one, I added up those like shapes. So I added up all of the stars, and I had 9 stars total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then I added up all the squares. So 1, 2, 3 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 dots. So I got 9,398, which is the same answer we got when we added writing it out with numbers. So the pictures really helped me with part C, because if I got to this point of 0.08, I'm not sure I would have remembered to put that 0 there. So I might have gotten confused with the decimal, but I could still use this same idea of using a different shape for each new column of a number. So I wrote up above the shapes that I used. So I tried to be consistent. So I still used my circle for any tens and a dot for any ones. So you see that here, my dot is for the ones. I used a dot for the ones and a circle for the tens. And then I decided to do a triangle for the tenths and a filled in square for the hundredths. So I have a triangle for the tenths here, here, and here. And then I have a filled in square for the hundredths. So for example, for 16.3, I have 1 10, 6 ones, and then 3 tenths. For 2.58, I had 2 ones, 5 tenths, and 8 hundredths. And then for 70.11, I have 7 tens, 1 tenth, and 1 hundredth. And then just like before, I'm going to add up those like shapes. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 circles. So I had 8 circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dots. So I had 8 dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 triangles. So here's my 9 triangles. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 squares. So 9 squares. So we ended up getting 88 and 99 hundredths, or $88.99 either way. So that's where I'm going to leave this video. In our next video, we're going to continue on with this method, which if you're in my class, you might see referred to as the addition process. So if you see that, that's what that means. The addition process is writing it out in this way, but you can also use the pictures for the addition process. So next, we're going to look at what happens if I add two shapes together and they spill over into another shape. So for example, if I add 7 and 8, I'm going to end up with 15. So now I have like 2 columns that are going to be interacting. So how will that impact things? So I'm looking forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye for now, everyone.